Mrs. Tehung, why did you have the name at one time in your life of Hanoi Hannah?
Well, I think that it's the name the GIs called me. I announced myself on the radio as Tu Hương, but I think that it's because the broadcast, the GIs, came from Hanoi. That's why they call it Hannah, because I think Hannah is the name of American woman, so maybe.
What years did you broadcast on Radio Vietnam?
Well, we call it a special broadcast to American GIs who were fighting in South Vietnam at that time. So we gave news about the war that are going on at that time, and we also introduced our tradition of resisting against aggression. We don't want the GIs to fight against the Vietnamese people.
What years were you on the radio? From when to when?
I think we began the broadcast at 65, around 1965. That's to say, the time the American troops were massively sent in South Vietnam to fight the war.
And when did you stop broadcasting?
75.
So you were
when the Paris Agreement was signed, then the GIs were brought home. So we stopped the broadcast for the GIs, but the other broadcasts for overseas listeners continue as usual.
And how did you get that job in the first place?
Well, I had been radio announcer long before I broadcast to the GIs, you see. So when there was war in South Vietnam, we initiated a program for the GIs. And as I'm a senior announcer, I was entrusted with the work of talking to the GIs over the radio.
And where were you born?
In Hanoi, in North Vietnam, I mean.
Yes. Mm-hmm. What year did you go to work for Radio Vietnam?
It's in 1955.
Where'd you learn your English?
In Hanoi also.
How come? What was the reason for learning English?
Well, it sounds rather ridiculous, but really, I learned in a French school, and I saw many American movies at that time. I mean, before the liberation of Hanoi, the time Hanoi was still under French occupation, which I saw a lot of American films, and I just like to know, to understand what the film stars, I would say, the actors in their dialogue, what are they saying? So I feel I like to learn English. So I took a special lesson in English with a British woman in Hanoi.
Was it hard?
No, I like it very much. Frankly speaking, I like English a little better than French because I think because the accent, it sounds very musical to the ear, shall we say.
We're doing this interview in Ho Chi Minh City. That's in South Vietnam, where South Vietnam used to be. Why did you move from Hanoi here, and what year did you do that?
The fact is that my husband was a southerner, see? So after the liberation of Hanoi, of Saigon, I'm sorry, in 75, so my husband returned to the South. So 6 months later, I joined him, and the whole family moved into Saigon.
Do you have children?
Yes, I had two, one son and one daughter.
Are they both here?
My son is in the States.
What's he doing there?
He's a painter.
What kind of a painter?
Well, you are the first American I say that. I don't want to talk much about my son.
But is he an artist? Is that the kind of painter you mean?
Well, he likes to become a painter.
All right, is it sensitive that he's there?
He went there long before, of his own will. I don't send him. Even I don't want him to go away from the family, but he likes it. So he just left the family and went away.
What's your husband do?
My husband is an engineer, but he has retired now.
And what did he do in the North during the war? Was he in the war?
Yes, he's an engineer in electronics.
Did you have to be an active member of the party in the North to get the job that you had?
No, even now I am not the party member, even now.
Did you have to believe in what you were reading to the GIs? Did you write it yourself?
Yes, I took part in the translation, also doing some of the writings, yes. Of course, we must believe in something.
And what did you, at that time, remember believing strongly in? What did you want to happen?
Well, really speaking, I don't want there is war between the Vietnamese people and the American who are sent here to fight the war. So we think it's not right. So I just want the GIs to resist this fighting, that they don't take part in the fighting. Of course, it's difficult for them because they are sent by the government, but our work is to make them believe that the war they are fighting is not just. It's against the Vietnamese people. The Vietnamese people want their country to be free, so they should not be here, the American GIs.
What year did you retire from being a radio announcer?
Well, from the day I went from Hanoi to Saigon, so I didn't broadcast on the radio anymore, so I worked for the television from 76 until 87, and I also retired.
What had gotten you interested in being in radio and television in the first place?
You mean from the beginning?
From the very beginning. Why did you choose that as a profession?
Well, it's, you know, in 55, I began to work for the radio because at that time I know some English. So I live in Hanoi. I never take part in anything for the revolution, so we say. So I just think that maybe it's useful. I can do some useful thing if I participate in some work. And as I know English, so I just volunteered to work for the radio. And the radio at that time, those people come from the jungle. So they just began the program, the English program at that time. So I volunteered to work as an announcer. Of course, I just begin my radio work because I just know English. Not much, but gradually with the work, I got the help from foreigners, Australians, who come to help to train me into an announcer.
And they trained you, what, in the 50s, late 50s?
On the job.
On the job, Australians.
Yes.
Have you met any GIs, American GIs, since 1975 and talked about the radio broadcast?
In Saigon, yes.
Do they look you up?
Ex-GI, the ex-GI. One of them is called Jeffrey Clifford. He's a helicopter driver during the war. And after the war, when we returned to the States, he's now a photographer. He made an album of Vietnam for the whole country, and he made some interviews, and he took some photo of me, and he put it in his album, and I got one album from my son, of course.
What hours of the day during the war did you actually broadcast?
Well, we choose the day that we thought would be suitable for the GIs and the return from the fighting. So we broadcast at, I think it's mainly at 8 p.m. Saigon time.
How long were your broadcasts?
30-minute program.
What evidence do you have that any GIs listened?
Of course, it's rather hard to get the back feed, but the feedback, I mean, but we know that they are listening. Recently, after the war, I had a videotape of Good Morning Vietnam.
The movie?
The video. So I know a little bit about the reaction of the GIs. But because, you know, our program serves for a cause, so we believe in that cause, so we continue to broadcast, and we know that certainly, if not all of the GIs, maybe some of them can listen. And as we have a cause to serve, so we just continue the work.
From what location in Hanoi did you actually broadcast?
It's in Hanoi. We broadcast, I think it's in the downtown of Hanoi. But the broadcasting station is outside. And during the bombings, we have several broadcasting stations from many parts of the country.
Did you lose any family in the war, or did you come close to getting bombed yourself?
No, I'm very lucky. No, none of my family was killed during the war.
What was the atmosphere in Hanoi during those years? Can you remember? What was
yes,
like?
The first time we heard the siren, the hooter, when there was American plane came to make the first bombing over Hanoi, we were a little bit taken by surprise, a little bit afraid, because we were just working, and just we heard the siren hooted. So everyone, because we were upstairs, so we went downstairs. But just for a little while, it is over. But you see, when there is alert, even 10 times a day, people become a little bit accustomed to it.
Have you ever been to the United States, by the way?
Me?
Yeah.
No.
Do you have
I hope someday in the future I can visit the States.
Do you prefer Hanoi or Saigon if you had the first choice to live? What city?
Well, really speaking, when I left Hanoi to live in Saigon in 76, I am a little bit upset because Hanoi is my native town. I have lived there for a very long time. Everything is very familiar with me. And Saigon is more noisy. Of course, the city is up to date, modern, with many villas. But really speaking, at that time, I prefer to live in Hanoi. Now, as my age is a little bit advanced, I think that the climate of the south is more suitable for me, because in the north the winter is very cold. But from time to time, I prefer the autumn in the north, because here you only have 2 seasons. It's a dry season and the rain season, and of course the dry season is very hot. But anyhow, I think now I get a little bit accustomed to the south.
After 17 years since the war's ended, what do you think of Americans today?
Frankly speaking, I don't have any enmity for the American in general.
Have you met many?
Quite a few of them after the war.
Is there any way to characterize how other friends of yours feel about Americans? I mean, would they be welcome back here?
I think so.
Why wouldn't there be a bitterness?
Well, let's bygone be bygones. It's you see, it's 92 now, and the war has ended since 76, so it's quite a long time. We shouldn't keep a rancor in our hearts for so long time. It's no good.
Is there any, and I'm going to let you go, you're very kind to spend this time with us. Is there any moment or two during the time that you broadcast as Hanoi Hannah to the GIs that you remember? Any particular broadcast that was more important to you than any of the others?
Yes, of course. Sometime when the news about the war has some particular things in, sometimes I feel it more important than the other day also.
Was there any one day that you remember?
No.
What did it feel like that day in 1975 when the last American helicopter took off from the embassy over here? Did you make a special broadcast that day?
Well, we keep informing the listener in general, the Americans, that now the war is coming to an end, so that those that can survive until the day can go home safe and sound. No more war, no more fear about being killed.
Do you miss those days at all? Do you miss the days when you were doing radio broadcasting at all?
You mean I remember?
But do you miss them? Do you wish you were still doing them?
Yes, sometimes I feel I miss them, especially when I had to leave Hanoi for the South, because I had been in the radio work for more than 20 years. So I feel very much attached to the radio work. Really speaking, I miss it a lot when I go to the South, because when I go to the South, I work for the television, which is a little bit like the radio, but not actually the radio work. So it's a new field of activity. But I miss a lot the radio work, and many of my friends, my comrades, my colleagues in the radio work. I had cried when I left the radio.
Thank you very much for talking with us.